Where do you find God? Almost sounds like a loaded question, doesn't it? I mean, if God was someone you could find, wouldn't everyone be out searching? Well, rather than looking for something elusive, like a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, I reckon it's more about learning to recognise the way God is already present to us in our everyday lives. I'm Lizzie Oakes, and this is Where Do You Find God? My guest on the podcast today is Lani Hanfiro. She is our Rhema Media graphic and design coordinator, organiser, many more things to this. She's also a very fiery prayer warrior. I've heard her pray at a staff meeting once and I thought, I want to get that lady on the podcast. Lani, welcome to Where Do You Find God?
Hello, good to be here.
Hey, look, I had to look you up on LinkedIn because I was like, you do graphics for me and things, and I thought, I know so very little about you. You've worked in a church, you've been a Pacific Media Watch project reporter, but I feel like there's a whole bunch more to you. Can you give us a little bit of an insight into the life of Lani?
Oh gosh. Yeah, so I do graphic design here. I did a little bit of freelance for a while at Voices of Hope.
Yeah.
Which was great.
Voices of Hope is awesome.
Yeah, they're really cool people there. But I'd probably say most of my week is taken up by youth ministry and also young adults ministry. So
that's your big passion.
Yeah, that's how would I put it. My husband Fini and I, we always talk about having an itch for what God's wanting us to be doing in this season. So that's our itch is for the young people at the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
So you run groups with young people?
Yeah. So we run the youth ministry. So that's every Friday night. And then there's connect groups. But we have leaders. You need teams. Otherwise, it's just,
yes,
you can't do it.
But it's your passion?
Exactly. Yeah. And then young adults is fortnightly. And so that's all your 18 pluses. And yeah, we have some really cool discussions with them. We love them.
That's cool. I remember doing that myself probably in my mid-20s. Mid to late 20s, being really involved, and it can take up a lot of your life, but it's really rich and rewarding, isn't it? And
it definitely is.
Those connections, and now I see some of those people, they're grown up and they've got kids of their own, and yeah, it's a good investment of time. So very cool that you and your husband do that.
Yeah.
Lani, in Acts chapter 17 verse 27 it says, God intended that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he be not far from each one of us. So my question for you today, Lani, is where do you find God?
I grew up in church. Well, I was basically born into church, so I've always been a Christian my whole life. Not to say that I've been a great Christian my whole life.
There's no such thing, actually.
Exactly, no perfect Christians.
Nope. But
I definitely think that the place that I find God is in the mundane and in the everyday.
Wow.
And I know everyone finds God and they connect with him in different ways. And my husband loves to see God in nature. And so he could just be out in nature. Not that I can't, but he really connects that way. And for me, it really is just the mundane, ordinary, everyday. I see his fingerprints just in everything.
That's so beautiful. Sometimes we can be looking for some big deal thing, God to turn up.
For sure.
But it sounds like you're saying he's already there. His fingerprints are already on things.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think it's very easy to get caught up in the busyness of life that we think we need to have this super spiritual big moment. Exactly. And it's not to say that God doesn't do the miraculous and he can do that, but he's also very intimate and he's as close as your breath, he's just there.
I also think those adrenaline rush places, they're not sustainable for us to live in as human beings.
No.
Your cortisol levels are shooting through the roof. It's fun, but it's actually, life is actually about the everyday, isn't it?
Yeah. I think I was listening to a podcast the other day and they talked about those kind of moments as being I think it's lighter fluid or they help to keep the flame going or give it an extra burst. But it's I don't think that's what we're supposed to sustain ourselves on.
No.
Alone.
So tell me more about you and finding God in the mundane. What does that look like? What does that feel like?
Yeah. Oh, well, actually something that happened last week to me. I was just having a quiet time, actually upstairs here because it's a really nice new area
out on the deck.
Out on the deck.
Isn't that good?
It's so good. And so I was sitting there and I was having a prayer time and I was just talking to God and I was saying, Lord, I think, not you, but me, I think I'm feeling a little bit distant and just desensitized to hearing his voice. You just you tend to block things out when it gets busy. And I'm like, I really just need to hear from you again. And I was coming home from, I think it was one of our appeal nights, so it was quite a late night. And I went to the supermarket and I came home and I'd lost one of my AirPods, my little earphones. And I was like, oh gosh, where is it? And so I didn't panic. I walked inside, I unpacked my work bag, and I was like, oh, these are quite expensive. I should probably find where that is. And almost clear as day, I just felt this like thought drop into my head. And it just said, go back. And I was like, okay, go back to the supermarket. Okay, I guess so. It was closing time. It was dark. It was raining. And I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so I was like, all right, let's just do it. I didn't even put my jacket on. It was raining. I just was obedient. And so I jumped in my car and I drove back to the supermarket. And I kid you not, I drove. And in the dark, in the rain, was this one little white AirPod just sitting there. And
on the ground?
Yeah, just on the ground. No one had taken it, hadn't been run over. It was just sitting there. And I remember just like being so happy. I hadn't even tested it. It was raining. So I was like, it's probably going to be broken. But I was just so happy that I was like, God, you saw me in the moment where I lost my AirPod. It wasn't anything significant. And like, my life still would have been okay if I didn't have that.
Yeah.
But he saw me even in that situation and circumstance.
I love that.
Jehovah Elroy, he does see. And
love that. Jehovah Elroy.
Yeah, I was like, he really does see. And I was just like, yay, God. I put it and it connected. And I was like, oh, that's even better. It's a working AirPod.
It's funny when you said you got in the car to go back, because I heard you say we, or maybe you did say we. Maybe your husband came with you. Or
no, it's just me.
I felt like you'd said we, and instantly I just got this picture of you driving the car and God being in the passenger seat going, yeah, come on, let's go back here. I reckon it's there.
Yeah.
Is that what it was like?
Yeah, it kind of did feel like that. Like I definitely think I could have easily gotten into that car and been like, oh, it's not going to be there, but I'll just do it anyway. But I brought my AirPods case. I brought everything in faith because I was like, it's going to be there. I don't know why I know that, but it's going to be there. And it was. And it was just like such a moment of like, yeah, God, you do see me.
And is that a little bit, is that a little bit of a story of your life, that sort of situation with you and God? Just, you said the mundane, the practical.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think like even talking to like our youth a lot, they're like, how do you know? Like, how do you know if God's talking to you, or how do you know if it's his voice? And like something I always share is like, it's like a muscle in your body. You'd kind of train your ear like in that same way. So if you just, in the everyday, in those sorts of moments, you kind of train yourself to know the voice of God in your life. Tune in, exactly. And so if you get used to hearing him in the small things like that, it's like when it comes to the big things or your life decisions, it's like you clear as day know what that voice is.
I so like that. That's obviously a behaviour you mentioned about being in church, growing up in church. That sounds like a behaviour that you've exercised for many, many years. Would that be right?
I definitely think, like my gym membership now, I'll put it like this. I'm a donor to the gym at the moment. So I think there have definitely been seasons where I've been, I don't know, a donor or like definitely in the last couple, maybe like 5+ years, I've definitely exercised that muscle more, I think.
Yeah. You call that mundane, but I actually just find that really exciting. Because a couple of times I go swimming at the beach. Like when I go to the beach, I take my goggles and my cap. And twice in the last week, I have been trying to lose them. And I've walked off down the beach and then I felt this almost like you.
Yeah.
Looked back. Oh my gosh, I've left them sitting up on that, beside that house, or they're just lying on the sand there. And I've tried to lose them twice. And I felt this little nudge. Just look back. Oh, and then I'm like, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
And then it happened again. And like you, I actually literally get excited about those moments, because what you're talking about is that God's interested in every detail of your life. And he's like a best friend.
Exactly.
And isn't that what a best friend's supposed to be like?
Yeah, it totally is. Yeah. I mean, I think there's just been story after story, like in my own life, of how God has turned up in the most creative and unique ways. And I love that about like how Pastor always calls God Creator God, because that's who he is.
Yeah.
But I think more recently I've just really like pressed into that. I'm like, God, you are creative. Or when we're praying for things, it's like, God, I don't know how you're going to do this.
Yeah.
Or what creative way you're going to do, but you're going to orchestrate it for good. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but you do. And that's a really cool and exciting thing I think we can trust in.
And part of your job of being a creator, I'll flick some words through to you, or I say, can you make an image up in this? And you think about it, you create, and you send something back, and I'm like, oh, I love that. That's you actually operating in your gift of being a creator, and you were created by the Creator. How cool is that?
True. Yeah, I think in my Instagram bio for a good while was what did it say? Created to create, or something like that.
Oh, I relate to that. Lani, thank you so much for joining me today on Where Do You Find God?
Not a problem.
If you'd like to listen again, tune in to Sanctuary on Wednesdays at 1:30 p.m. or listen and subscribe via your favourite podcast app and give us a review so other people can find us.